It should appear to our audience in a second. Yeah, I guess we are already live. So, welcome to the BSS with No Secrets podcast. And this is another episode which I run with experts from around Europe and around the globe. And today, my special guest is.
Hi, Victor. Thank you. My name is Laura. I'm the head of Business Services and ICT Team over here at Invest Lithuania. It's so great to see and talk to you. It's been a while.
Oh, definitely. It's been a while, and I don't even recall when we met last time, but it was quite a long time already.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Laura, you are the head of GBS and ICT team within Invest Lithuania, and it looks like this is one of the industries which became within the last decade very important for Lithuania. Can you just in few words say how it is positioned next to any other of the industries which are present or coming to Lithuania, and how this industry looks now for the moment?
So, talking about the importance of the industry in general, over here in Lithuania, we have half of our organization working for investment attraction, so around 50 people. And within that part of organization, we have 4 teams. So there's a team working on life sciences, which is one of our key areas, one team working on manufacturing, one team working on tech projects with fintech and game development, and we have a separate team that is focusing solely on attracting GBS projects and helping those large companies to settle their either GBS or ICT centers over here, either Vilnius and Kaunas or in Klaipėda. These would be the typical locations. So throughout, especially maybe last 10 years when the industry just started to grow, it's been a very interesting journey. Now the industry accounts for around 1.5% of the total GDP in the country, which I think, having in mind that it came a bit later over here to Lithuania compared to, let's say, Poland or Hungary, that's a great achievement. And last year we saw growth of around 14% in terms of employment. Again, I think very much at par to a lot of mature locations in Central Eastern Europe. And we're edging towards that 20,000 employee mark in the industry. So yeah, it's one of the key areas in Lithuania in general in terms of how the government treats, in terms of various programs that are being developed for this industry in particular. And we feel that at least for the next 5 to 10 years, this is the industry where a lot of attention, both from the government, but also from the private sector, is going to be directed to.
Okay, we'll go through all those elements in a moment, but one of the reasons, and I need to mention it now of our call, is that you have recently released a very interesting report. You are releasing it every year since 5-6 years already, if I'm not wrong, and it covers all of the important data. There is a little bit of marketing of Lithuania, but a lot of data focused about the industry. And it looks like that within the last 10 years, you are growing like 12 to even 15% year to year. So it's like, whoa, it's just growing rapidly. And I did even a small exercise today in the morning, and I did compare the numbers between Poland and Lithuania. When it comes to the number of employment versus all of the inhabitants of the countries. And you know what? In Lithuania, it's 0.75%. In Poland, it's 0.84%. So it's nearly the same when it comes to the relation of employees employed within the GBS, BPO, BSS industry versus the total number of inhabitants. So it's really, really impressive. We are nearly on the same level, I must say.
Yeah, we're definitely getting up there. And as you rightly mentioned, this report, which is Lithuania's Business Services Report, as we call it, it's our 6th edition. So we started way back, I don't know when, half a decade ago, when we just kind of started to dig into the industry, and we understood that we kind of lacked generally the knowledge, and all the data that was necessary for projects coming into Lithuania. So we conducted our first survey those 6 years ago. I think the initial report was maybe 8 pages long. Now we have over 50. I think that also talks to how much not only the industry itself grew, but also understanding and the data and the insights that we have about the industry over here in Lithuania developed. So as you rightly mentioned, we have a lot of data here, all typical bits and pieces about the functions, about the locations where the companies come from, about the language split, but also about the wages, wage growth, real estate situation. So all those kind of elements that any center that would like to benchmark themselves would need to know, or the new company that is still looking into Lithuania as a potential location would kind of like to tick off within their business case.
So maybe let's start from the very beginning. So from the investors, from where do they come from when it comes to the settling down the operation centers in Lithuania? Because as all across the Europe, most probably the most significant player are US, but who are the others?
Yeah. So over here in Lithuania, the situation is pretty much similar, that US is the leading force. So it accounts for around 35% of total employment. And in fact, this share has been growing throughout the years as well. So only last year, it grew by 5 percentage points. But maybe what makes Lithuania stand out a little bit compared to, let's say, Poland or Hungary is that we have a significant presence of Nordic companies over here in Lithuania. So in total, the whole region accounts for around 40% of total employment, with Denmark being the largest country over here. So very strong representation of especially the financial sector from the Nordic countries, but also kind of increasing the whole variety through IT and manufacturing as well. We have also seen an increased attention from German companies over the last couple of years. So we had a couple of new names like Nordic, for example, settling in Kaunas. So those that are just starting to adopt GBS model would be looking for those kind of new, maybe less saturated locations, and they're pretty confident, kind of venture out more to the north and to the east for those kind of still growing locations. So it's also very exciting that we're kind of expanding the horizon of GBS representation over here.
And the main reason of it is rather the short distance to Nordics, or this is knowing the languages, or there are some other elements which push the investors from Nordics and Germany to locate their business in Lithuania?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of all of those elements. So initially, I think for the Nordic companies, the physical proximity. So for example, Vilnius is only 1 hour flight away from Stockholm. So we can pretty much fly in here, have the whole day of meetings and fly back. That was just very, very convenient. But also the language mix. So Lithuania is one of the few locations in Europe where you can find a larger concentration of Nordic speakers over here. So it's mostly Lithuanians who went to, let's say, study to Nordic countries, which is very, very popular over here, and came back with the language knowledge. But also these kind of harder to measure cultural factors were very important. So generally, Nordic brands are very well perceived in Lithuania. People do want to be part of that kind of Nordic culture, so to say. So employees are naturally kind of drawn to those companies, but also just work ethics and work style, kind of cooperative teamwork focus, work culture. I think something that made a lot of Nordic companies feel very much at home over here.
You mentioned Vilnius, and yes, as the capital is the main target, let's say, for the operation centers. I remember when I was in 2016 visiting Vilnius, then at that time, I think it was 95% of all of the investments at that time located in that city. But already at that time, Kaunas was appearing on the market. But now those are not only those two cities. There are more destinations which are visible for the industry.
Yeah, that's very much true. So Kaunas itself had a kind of a little renaissance, if you want to say so, over the last couple of years. It's going to be European capital of culture in 2022. So there's a lot of general new development in terms of social infrastructure and overall view of the city and how much, for example, services are provided in English. I think that was also a helping factor. We had a couple of really large manufacturing companies from Germany coming over to Kaunas, and we also had a couple of high-level M&A deals. So one of Lithuanian startups was bought by Oracle, so now they have kind of a cybersecurity base in Kaunas, and another long-term software development partner, Lithuanian partner, was bought by the Dassault Systems, a huge French company. So through these kind of bits and pieces, the Kaunas profile did rise quite a bit. Another location that is still in the very, very early steps of development, I would say, would be Klaipėda, which is the port city. So it is really rich in terms of logistics talents. If you need to talk anything, maritime and so on, it's a great location, and I'm sure you would agree that in general, supply chain and similar functions are really on the rise. So we know locations like Dansk, who kind of has a strong presence there, and we feel that with all the talent is there, multilingual talent in Klaipėda, it could be the kind of another interesting location to discover for companies that might be looking into that sort of talent in particular.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And to be honest, I am very much, how to say that, surprised? No, surprise is not a good wording, but those cities who are the capitals of culture, as we mention it, they become really in the interest of the business as well. We had the same in Wrocław when Wrocław was the capital of culture. I was last year in Plovdiv in Bulgaria, where there was exactly the same. And that's amazing that actually the BSS industry is choosing those destinations. It's like being closer to that fact. That's just a surprise. Okay, Laura, let's focus maybe on the type of services which are being provided by the GBS or SSC or the BPO centers in Lithuania. Is there any way to group them somehow to see that there are, for example, financial ones or IT ones, or there are so many of them that you cannot group in a specific, let's say, folder? So
yeah, I think if you really want, you can group anything, in life. So the same goes for function. So in Lithuania, around a third of all the labor force when it comes to GBS work in IT. So this would be, software development specialists in particular, QA, cloud operations are very much on the growth now. Cybersecurity would be also part of that function, and of course, service desk and so on. So it has been the kind of function which kind of started the industry, and it's still the leading one in Lithuania. The second most popular would be customer operations. So again, due to the fact that Lithuania is general very multilingual nation, so we have Nordics, we have a lot of German speakers because it's a very popular language to study in school. So 60-70% of students take it, on top of English. So lots of companies like, Booking.com and many others kind of settle for that function in particular over here in Lithuania, and it accounts for around a quarter of total employment in the industry over here. The third most important part would be finance and accounting. So again, everything from simple APAR to FP&A functions growing now within, finance and accounting area over here in Lithuania. So it's a little bit below 20%. And the rest would be kind of a mix of those, maybe not as labor intense, but maybe more high-end functions, things like, big data analytics, marketing. Robotics is very, very much on the growth over here in Lithuania in all kind of functional scopes as well. So these would be three main kind of areas. And I would also want to maybe point out that due to the fact that we have very strong representation from finance industry in particular, not only from the north, but also guys like Western Union, NASDAQ is over here. So compliance and KYC and AML functions is also very much on the growth. It's very much true for global economy, but also over here in Lithuania.
Jesus, I'd love our students in Poland to encourage them to study German on the level as you have it, because I fully agree that now the demand for the German speakers is growing every year. Actually, German business was already communicating it like a decade ago that they will be opening much more for outsourcing or shared services, modern functions within the near shoring destinations. But Poland somehow missed it, and we still miss a lot of quality when it comes to the German speakers. And I hope it will change, because there is a big potential in that market. And the other thing which you mentioned, cybersecurity, I guess this is very interesting, because now, like, we are. Okay, let's say we are already familiar with the whole pandemic issue all around us, but that forced a lot of businesses to work from home. But that created a lot of cybersecurity issues. So this is like a target for the future. And I think this is really good that already you have it identified, that this is a group of processes which the operation centers are taking care of. But let's maybe move to the area of people who work. Okay, you mentioned there is more or less 21,000 people working in the industry already, but do you calculate somehow what is the average size of the operation center? How many languages are being used in the operational model? Some kind of that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have that kind of that we like to call, the average center over here in Lithuania. So when it comes to size, we do have, a couple of really large players like Danske Bank with 4,000 people, or Western Union with 2,000 people. But kind of the average size of the center is around 250. So it's kind of a well-sized, mid-sized center, I would say, for the industry. Now, when it comes to employees themselves, average age is, I think, very much close to what we see in Hungary and Poland, so around 30 years. So that kind of generation that is very tech savvy, but that raises some brows in terms of their working style and so on. So it's very much have the same situation over here. Now, when it comes to languages, again, especially if we look at those centers that have more focus on customer operations or global focus, we see that they provide services in 10, 15 languages. Western Union, for example, has 35 languages represented in their center. So all the typical Western European languages, but also they have those smaller teams of more exotic languages like Arabic or Mandarin in their center. On average, the center performs in 4 to 5 languages. This would be kind of the typical area.
I think it's also good to mention that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got more or less 50% male and 50% female who work in the GBS industry.
Yeah, very much correct. So overall, in terms of employment, we have pretty much 50-50 split. But what's, I think, even more important, and it was very fascinating for us to discover that this kind of representation goes to the very top level of the center. So in terms of senior management, we have also pretty much 50-50 representation, and we even checked the actual heads of centers. So I think the split is there 45 to 55. So again, very good representation, and I think that's a very high mark to hit, not only for other countries but also for other industries over here in Lithuania. So we've been very pleasantly surprised by that.
Having relatively young, let's say, population working in the BPO, BSS industry means that most of them are fresh graduates of the local universities or the schools. Are there any specific programs run within the universities when it comes to the cooperation between the BSS industry and these educational institutions?
So I guess we have, a couple of channels how companies typically do that. There are some centers that, have developed a direct relationship with some of the universities that have, kind of programs that are most suitable to them as an employer. So, centers that have engineering services with them, typically cooperate with technical universities, buying out of research or doing, some graduate programs together, but also Invest Lithuania as an organization. So if you remember in the beginning, I mentioned that we have half organization working with investment attraction. So the half organization, another 50 people are what we call our PMO office. So the guys that actually do all the hard work and ensure that the investment environment is, to the level that our investors need. And we have a separate group that works only with education. So whenever a new company comes into Lithuania, we sit down and we talk, within the whole, education area, which universities are the ones for you to reach out to, what kind of programs do you want to look into? Do you need to sit down with the deans and look through the curriculum to change maybe some particular modules? So we help to introduce things like, gap standard to some universities that do financial work, because for American companies, that was very important. That was not very popular, a couple of years back in Lithuania. The same was with, for example, mainframe program. When Barclays came into Lithuania, there were pretty much no mainframe specialists. So we sit down with Vilnius University, we looked at, how we could make this happen. The company provided lectures because they were, technical experts within the field, and university provided, kind of marketing and student attraction to that particular module. And now we have this whole separate population of mainframe specialists in Lithuania, which is, a very, very special thing within, IT field. And this is how we typically cooperate. As I mentioned, these are those companies that already know what they want to do, so they can work with the university directly, or we work as that kind of bridge to find those relationships that they need, and making sure that it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
And are the universities open for such, let's say, cooperation or modification of the programs they already have?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think especially now, after Lithuania joined European Union, universities were forced to compete on kind of a more global scale than they used to before. So now they not only have to provide all the theoretical knowledge, all the books and lectures, but they need to provide that crucial experience part as well for the students, so that they would be able to come into the labor market already ready to work. And I think that is already very much in the minds of people that go into universities in Lithuania. They want to go to those universities that will have, the best internship programs, cooperation with universities in terms of, some sort of semester projects and so on. So as the universities were forced to kind of compete on that practical level, they're very much, it's within their interest to find those well-known international brands and companies with interesting functions that relate to their curricular, to offer that opportunity to their potential students, just to kind of attract them to universities. So they're very, very much open. As I mentioned, we have this example with mainframe. Our colleagues from manufacturing team also created a separate program for aviation, for example. So there's so much that we can, I think, still do and improve within education system. And we definitely feel that universities see private companies, and especially those international companies with a lot of experience, as a vital partner to this journey.
Okay. Besides people, this industry, especially this industry, needs modern office spaces. So, and this is sometimes a challenge for various cities and countries to have the availability of the correct, good ones, office spaces for this industry. How this area has changed within the last years, and what is the offer when it comes to the modern buildings in Lithuania for the purposes of BSS industry?
Yeah, I think especially maybe over the last half of a decade, it's been a huge change in terms of mindset of developers over here in Lithuania. So we have a couple of strong Lithuanian developers, but also a couple of Nordic ones represented. So when especially GBS and ICT industry started really to grow, they definitely felt that there was that particular demand from international companies. They had a very strong standard of how their office space has to look, where it has to be within the city, with kind of connectivity, infrastructure they want to even see around the campus, for example. And they really responded well to that kind of a new bar that was raised for them in particular. So in Vilnius, we do have a lot of new office space. If you were, I think, in Lithuania in 2016, 2017, right, for one of our GBS community gatherings, I believe so. So you would already coming here a couple of years from then, we see a huge change within how Vilnius looks like, especially our business district, which is on a lovely place on the bank of a river. Even like on the other side of the window over here, I can already see 5 cranes working on that area in particular. So it's been a huge boom. Things like BREEAM and Lean are pretty much standard certifications for office space to have as well. When it comes to Kaunas, again, especially 5 years ago, this was a huge problem. We have even lost a couple of projects due to the fact that there was just no significant supply of that good quality office space. But again, I think brokers and developers saw a huge opportunity for this development. So there is a plenty of various kind of office space, more Nordic style or more kind of American to choose from.
I think this was a challenge for a lot of countries and cities. We had similar thing in Poland, that the big cities, okay, they had the good quality and good quantity of the available office space, but the smaller guys were waiting for the investor to create an office space when it worked completely different way. So you had to have a good office space to encourage investor to come. And so yes, I fully agree that this is something what changed Europe, actually, the whole Europe. And now this approach is a little bit different. And I hope that after this pandemic, we will come back to our offices, because they look amazing. It's a good place to meet people and to spend some time working on very interesting projects. But I have left something for the last part of our conversation, and this is actually the area of yours, which is the Invest Lithuania. When the new GBS is interested in coming to Lithuania, how usually the process looks like if somebody is knocking to your door? How does it look like?
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost where how we typically start a relationship with new companies is very much through data. So in Lithuania, I think we're one of the kind of typical sources when companies look for that information on functional scope, on other major GBS centers, even for particular wages for particular functions. We are the body that kind of collects and condenses all this information. And when the company needs something to put within their business case for that initial try, we're typically the team that provides this information. Afterwards, of course, there's a very important element of visiting the country. So we provide everything that is needed in terms of agenda itself. So we're very much in contact with most of the centers. So we're here so we can find the right kind of peer company for you to talk to. So if you're American from finance industry, we can find a company that's already been through this journey and settled, let's say, in Lithuania, and it can tell you not only lovely marketing stuff that we have on hand, but also the really gritty things, lessons learned and what they would have done differently and so on. And this is invaluable kind of contents to have, even if, for example, you don't really land in the country. There's so much to learn from these companies that have already been through the journey. Now, there's also that portion of financial support. We provide quite a menu of different financial support programs for potential investors. So it can range anything from, financial support for creation of new jobs in the country. We have a separate program for trainings, which is, important if you're just starting off this journey. We have another couple of that we are now in the making. So one is requalification, especially in those kind of more niche IT areas. This could be, big data analytics or specific cybersecurity profile that the companies might be looking into. Again, covering all the expenses related to that, and also a new program for RP development, or robotic process automation, or intelligent process automation rather. So anything from licenses to courses to consultants fees, for example. So it's pretty much covers the whole journey from initial setup of the center to what you would need to add those high-end functions on top of that. And so this is the initial kind of part where investors still looking to land into Lithuania. And if we are, kind of successful, we get the lovely, PR message that the companies over here, we definitely strive to be a very active partner in, that second part of the journey when the investor is already here. So during the first kind of initial months, we help a lot with marketing, especially to kind of key audiences. So maybe those, from 25 to 35, which would be your key demographic for potential employees. So we have a very strong team that is focusing on digital marketing and social media. So we can, craft messages or help them, kind of create their following here. We can help, to arrange maybe interview with leading media outlets over here, just kind of to raise the profile, make sure that everybody who needs to know that the company is over here and doing that particular function, they kind of get that message so that, CVs start getting in. We can, provide information about partners over here. This could be anything from, HR agencies that have experience in this particular area, brokers that, knows office space in and out, as well as, as we already kind of talked about, universities and education space. Who would be the deans, to talk in Vilnius, Kaunas, Klaipėda, or, outside the cities as well. And afterwards, we kind of employ, so to say, our investors to kind of advise us back, on what we need to do more for them to be successful. So this could be anything that they could say that they need more flights to, let's say, Germany on different times, or to London. If they need something changed within the labor code, if they need something changed within migration processes over here, or pretty much, any other area within what's within the, the government's portfolio, that we can kind of reach into those particular ministries or other administrating bodies, talk to them and see what we can change. So we kind of really look for that active participation within the kind of creation of investment environment from the investors' part as well.
And are those investors, let's say, so open to communicate those changes they would require? Like you mentioned, even finding out the new flight connections. Is it really happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially when it comes to GBS, we're kind of in very good position, is that we were with most of the companies that came to Lithuania over the last decade. So, I work in Invest Lithuania for, 6 years. We have colleagues who work with the GBS, for 7, 8 years as well. So we kind of know all the management. We kind of communicated with the teams that were selecting the location, and we do what is in our power to kind of maintain that relationship. And I think that investors really see the benefit in them being open and telling us, giving us their feedback, what they would like to happen within the investment environment, and they're pretty happy to provide us with that feedback. And I think we already shown that we can be quite effective in terms of enacting those change. And when you see that something is happening, it's easy to kind of give your time for that additional change, and bother yourself a little bit to kind of provide that additional data that we need to enact even further changes.
And are there, completely different question, are there any challenges for the industry, for the GBS industry currently in Lithuania? Is there anything what might be described as a challenge for this industry?
Mm-hmm. So again, it's, I think, very much, it really depends from company to company. So especially maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, a very important challenge that we had was the mid-management layer within the centers. So obviously, just because the industry hasn't been in Lithuania for that long, we did not have as much time to kind of grow that mid-management layer who would know how to, build the center itself, or, how to enact the transaction and processes from other countries and so on. So all those kind of bits and pieces that you need to know when building a new center. So yeah, maybe some 3, 5 years ago, that was a huge challenge. Obviously, with the kind of explosion of growth over here, this has eased a lot over the last couple of years, I would say. Another I would say a challenge, or maybe an area which companies really need to maybe think about or look into, would be sometimes particular language skill sets. So it's both a blessing and also kind of a con when you are known as a multilingual population, because companies expect that French, German, of course, but we'll have also a huge team of Czech speakers or Hungarian speakers. And I bet you know yourself very much that, especially when it comes to, let's say, Eastern European languages, there's not that much intermix between the countries here. So sometimes it's harder to find, let's say, Hungarian speakers in Lithuania than, I don't know, Italian or Spanish native speakers over here. So sometimes that's this kind of maybe area where companies don't really pay enough attention to maybe think of how this transition would work. Perhaps we can have some guys from those locations to relocate over here rather than finding absolutely new talent. So it might not be as huge of a challenge, but maybe an area where companies kind of lack a little bit of attention in this area.
Okay, so now last but not least, a small view to the future. How do you expect the next era of GBS in Lithuania? Do you expect that it will be a stable growth as it was so far, or perhaps there are some new things which are already on the horizon?
Yeah, so I guess one of the factors here would be RPA, as we kind of already talked about. I think it's something that a lot of locations are generally thinking about, and lots of companies are thinking about whether perhaps the actual growth of employees in their center will either slow down or remain the same, though the workload that it's going to put upon itself is going to grow. But RPA will help to kind of shoulder that burden. So it's really still hard to tell. I think over the next couple of years, we will not see a major impact in terms of slowing down unemployment, but maybe 5 years ahead, this will definitely enable a lot of people to shift from more transactional processes to those high-end that might not just generally need that much employment. So it will be very interesting to see how the industry handle that in the future. But with the fact that we are, as an organization, are even creating financial support programs for additional impact, creation of additional RP programs within the centers, we are generally pretty optimistic regarding this in the future. Another huge trend, I think, will also be I don't know how to say, maybe digitalization or globalization of the attitudes towards the customer. So if it was more regional, we feel that a lot of companies are becoming more and more adventurous in terms of what kind of regions they want to cover, what kind of channels they want to provide from the center. And digital is the area where there's so much more growth. Obviously, the pandemic had, I think, a strong impact with a lot of companies shifting from those brick and mortar kind of setup to more digital channels, and that will very much, I think, be reflected in GBS industry as well, with all the digital and the supporting functions growing in that area in particular.
Thank you very much. I guess this is very, very nice view of the future, and it is in line of this how the whole industry around the globe is changing. So it's moving into this digitalization. It's moving into RPA. This RPA is changing again. Yeah? It's getting more advanced. There is more artificial intelligence which is connected to that. Okay, I guess that we could talk like that, but unfortunately we need to go to the end. And my last question is, which might be very valuable for our listeners and viewers. Can you say how to reach you, how to reach Invest Lithuania, and where to look if anyone wants to have more information about GBS industry in Lithuania?
So a couple of main ways to reach us. First would be through our webpage, which is investlithuania.com. You can find the contact form there if you are interested in particular in GBS industry. Also, all of the information about, success stories, who is already over here. Information about labor pool is also there if, the companies would like to explore. Also, you will find the actual, digital copy of the report there, and you can download it from our webpage as well. Another area would be to reach us through LinkedIn. Again, Invest Lithuania, and our Global Business Services has even its own show page. So you can definitely go ahead and kind of, if you want to specifically find more information in the kind of social media space about that, you can definitely find it there. And reach us through LinkedIn or through our webpage. These would be the two best ways, I would say.
Okay, so this what I will do is that after our call, this is going to be presented as let's say a little bit moderated show later on. So we will add some additional slides and data, and to the description of our talk I will attach those links which you just mentioned, so it should help our readers and viewers to find you in much easier way. Laura, it was a big moment for me to talk to you, to have this international speech about the GBS status in Lithuania. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you soon, not necessarily via video, but in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Victor, for inviting me on your podcast, and generally for creating this very much engaging content for the GBS community. I think there will be a lot of people who will enjoy it.
Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.